I welcome everyone to our second and last session. Um, Time management also matters um, in such meetings or any other meeting. You can lose it out on management of time. We really don't have much, as the um, circulated agenda will show. We would have preferred that maybe some resource persons to support our own people like Dennison were here, but as he reported yesterday, it was not possible for them to come. We will call upon once again on Dennis perhaps to recap what we did, if there are any other issues that people on the floor may want to bring up. You're more than welcome to do so. But I may plead your indulgence that some of these things are of a very high level where people like us may not be able to give satisfactory answers. For instance, if you talk about troika operations, whether it's doing all right, well, it's okay to express what we see from a distance, but it would be nice if we had people from the troika or from the secretariat, SADC secretariat. But be that as it may, we will try and listen to you, what you think should be issues of concern, issues that should be raised in respect of each of those three areas. Conferring with our esteemed secretary, he's very experienced in the operations, administrative matters of this committee. We will work towards finishing lunch or before lunch, because there will be nothing to come back for thereafter. So that's what we have agreed with the secretary. Without any further ado, but I know yesterday we were already on the protocol on politics, defense, and security cooperation. I had stopped Honorable from South Africa. He was already making an intervention. I remember Honorable brother from Angola, the general, also made an intervention. He talked a lot. Whether we're able to answer what he said or not, that's another thing, but we can always try. Like I said, some of these things, if we had someone from the Troika, it would help us a lot. But we will try our best. I know in line was also DRC. DRC had something to comment on. But may I plead with the honorable members that mentioning a country's name there It's not to paint a wrong picture about that country. I think Dennis will take note of it, but it's not intended and will never be intended to name and shame a particular country. That's not the point. It's just to facilitate discussion. Maybe it's enough to say we have ratified and how we are doing as a region. We don't have to really spend much time like someone in the joint meeting said, and you start to be on the defensive mode. If we speak country by country, I remember I was a victim of that thing. So maybe we should avoid. I mean, we are brothers and sisters here. We're not about pointing fingers at anyone, but we want a collective agreement, consensus on any issue. Having said that, I will now call upon our resource person. What happened to the Troika? I thought we bring the people from the Secretariat.
They are any other.
Or they are in the other committees, ignoring us.
No, SADC committee is not SADC BF.
Oh, okay.
They have ongoing activities in terms of their mandatory calendar.
Oh, okay. So they are involved somewhere.
With the elections, there are elections that are ongoing. They just concluded Seychelles there in Tanzania.
Okay.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and honorable members. So I thought we should just do a little bit of a recap from where we were yesterday. I've took note of your concern, Chair, and I've deleted the names. So just to recap a bit, yesterday we did we presented the protocol on corruption. I'm not going to go back into that. I think the discussion was exhaustive and we finalized that one. But then the next one was the protocol on politics, defense, and security cooperation of 2001, which we said this one is a big one. And the overall objective, of course, is to promote peace and security in the region. Now, in terms of the status of signing, ratification, and implementation, I mentioned yesterday that 11 member states have ratified. Actually, I made a mistake. It's 5 now who have not ratified. We won't go into the naming, but 11 have ratified, 5 have not.
Sorry, Dennis. No, if we don't have the names, then it will not help the committee. I don't think that's what the chair meant. No, I mean, this is the focus of the committee. Actually, remember what we agreed. We want for the next 2 years for them to prioritize and say, this is where ratification has not happened. And let's advocate for ratification. So if the ratification has happened, the committee will actually look back and say, we're able to successfully advocate for ratification. Remember, General yesterday was even keen to know, specifically when you mentioned Angola. Those are the kind of practical actions that we require. I think the question that the chair is making is to say, we are not saying this in bad light. It is for the knowledge of the members so that we take action, but not to list 5 and the 5 are not known. What will be the value? Sure.
Okay. In that case, then the 5 members who have not ratified are the republics of Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Comoros, the Union of Comoros, Madagascar, and Seychelles. Now, there was a question yesterday, of course, that, okay, some of these member states are really active. So being active, which is true, some of them are probably even more active in the peace and security space than some which have not ratified. But again, legally being active does not mean you have ratified. So these are two different things. So the protocol came into force way back in March 2004. That's almost 21 years ago. Implementation challenges, member states are implementing the protocol. However, of course, there's a need to urge those countries, which I just mentioned, to accede to the protocol, which has already come into force. Yesterday, I also highlighted some of the key, the situation as far as the peace and security area is concerned in the region. And we said, generally, the region is stable and free from intra-region, intrastate conflicts. But of course, we still have the conflicts in Madagascar, in Mozambique, registered successes. There is still sustained political and diplomatic initiatives required in the post-SAMI DRC period, considering the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation in Eastern DRC. So Eastern DRC, there are still issues there, despite the withdrawal of the SAMI DRC. In terms of conflict mediation, I also mentioned that, that we have structures in place. We have the panel of elders, and then we have the mediation reference group, which has been doing good work in terms of trying to mediate conflicts. In terms of the standby force deployment response time to emergencies, we are saying it's moderate, but we are anticipating that it will improve following the completion of the regional logistics depot. So that's also something worth noting. We also have in place the early warning system, and there are figures which have been quoted, at least for the last year. 370 threats were detected and reported by the State Security Subcommittee. 177 are in threats associated with social issues, 51 economic, 61 political, and 81 security. So the early warning system is working. In terms of transnational organized crime, there's also some interventions there. At least for the last year, 4 joint operations resulted into arrests. Almost 7,930 suspects were arrested, including 4,739 individuals for trafficking or possessing of illegal firearms, which led to the recovery of 4,484 illegal firearms, 38,047 rounds of ammunition, and 1,767 explosives. So there's some work being done in that area. And then, of course, bringing in the issue of gender, women in peace operations. We have what the situation on the ground is that female participation in peace missions was 9.66% within in the context of SAMIM, and 7.6 in the context of SAMI DRC deployments. So that's the situation in as far as women and peace is concerned. It stands at 8.6 across all missions, below the 15% target of 2030. So we have a target in our vision, in the SADC vision, in the medium-term plan, to have at least 15% women participating in peace operations. I mentioned yesterday that in terms of counterterrorism, the region, SADC has actually established the Counterterrorism Center, which is headquartered in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. It was established in 2022, but of course it has challenges in terms of staffing and other issues. But at least it's there, it's been established, and it has started working on issues of counterterrorism. And then there's also the issue of maritime security. The SADC Fisheries Monitoring, Control, and Surveillance Coordination Center has significantly enhanced regional enforcement capabilities against illegal fishing and maritime violations. So there is also some progress in the area of maritime security. So, Chair, in a nutshell, that's the protocol, and that's the situation on the ground in as far as peace and security efforts are concerned. I like to submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Well, we had already started yesterday making inputs, interventions. I know Angola did. South Africa attempted and was abruptly stopped by me. In good faith, I was thinking I was stopping the meeting. I was wrong, but eventually I won. We postponed, adjourned the meeting to today. There we are, ladies and gentlemen. If there are any things, but what I would ask and what would help, we know the key areas of that protocol, the key performance indicators, whether he has adequately covered those or not, it's up to us. But yesterday, we regulated ourselves how we would go about making interventions. Even here, I would think if we follow the same procedure that we followed with the anti-corruption protocol. In other words, are there any areas where we think we may have to improve or we may have to recommend to plenary for improvement? Because ours here is to come up with resolutions, recommendations that we may put across for plenary consideration. That's where we are. I don't want to stop maybe Angola, who has already submitted, but Angola has submitted. We may need to react to what he said. And I remember DRC wanted to make an intervention too, like I said, Kenneth too, and maybe everyone else. That should be the way. So over to you, honorables. Maybe I give you South Africa because I stopped you. You were already making an intervention yesterday.
No, thank you, Chair. Greetings to yourselves and the esteemed members of the committee. The contribution that I wanted to make, Chair, to me relates to the first three thematic areas that speaks to the regional stability, conflict mediation, and standby force. The presentation must be appreciated because indeed it captures a sense of the forum at work, because it indeed makes a reflection in terms of the work that we saw when both the organ and the forum was in action, particularly with the situation both in Mozambique and also in DRC. We know what is happening in the northern part of Mozambique, Cabo Delgado, and therefore the message has to be appreciated as captured there because of the intervention. Then indeed, I think it's an area that has to be appreciated. There's an area that I wanted to flag, particularly given the common denominator between the two, both Mozambique and also the DRC. Clearly, both Cabo Delgado and DRC, you see these conflicts emerging where there's a vast deposit of minerals. Obviously, with Cabo Delgado, the identification of oil and the scramble for that, and also the fact that DRC is a region rich in minerals, which are essential for Western countries. And one of the question is whether is this deliberate to keep the SADC region in a perpetual conflict situation or not? Because clearly the attempt to continue to loot Africa as a whole and SADC in particular is an area that we see in action. So therefore, the continuity of this war continue to project the region as a region that is trapped in misery. Is it a resource curse, chairperson? Which as the sense that one get, given the intervention that both the organ or the PF were able to put in action last year to a larger degree to stabilize the situation, has to be appreciated. That's why I'm saying that I think what is quite key is to appreciate those 3 points. But the clarity, maybe what Dennis could elaborate more further, will be on the stand force deployment. The sense that one got in relation to DRC situation was that this was an area of concern. You remember, as a country, we lost some soldiers there, and because of the organ and the PF, the situation is stabilized now. But I want to get more details in terms of the stand force deployment. Whether do we can with confidence say this response is adequate, or is it an area that has to be flagged? I want to propose that probably it's an area that we need to continue working on it, and therefore it's an area that we could elevate to the plenary to say, given the history in terms of where we come from on regional logistic depot, we need to as a PF put much more emphasis on this in terms of oversight to get a sense as to whether our countries equally contributing to this regional logistic depot. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, South Africa. My friend Sebastian Ngola.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente. Eu saúdo todos os membros da comissão. Não quero fazer polêmica à volta daquilo que nós ontem já tivemos a ocasião de colocar aqui e que hoje estamos a dar o remate, digamos, remate final. Eu ontem teria dito que, ou teria perguntado se os dados que nos trouxeram aqui assim são recentes ou têm já alguma idade relativamente à ratificação ou não do protocolo por parte de Angola. E teria sublinhado que tinha havido uma intervenção militar da Angola, da Namíbia e do Zimbábue no Congo, na RDC, e com a umbrella da SADC. Não nos parece que isso tenha sido de ânimo leve e numa altura em que o presidente da SADC era o presidente Mandela, o presidente do órgão de segurança era o presidente Mugabe. Portanto, acho que devemos pontualizar esta informação. A segunda questão que nós gostaríamos de repisar é a situação no leste da República Democrática do Congo. Nós pretendemos estabilidade, digamos, na nossa região. E por isso devemos fazer tudo, mas tudo que estiver ao nosso alcance, no sentido de trazermos a estabilidade para a nossa região. Nós não teremos desenvolvimento na região se continuarmos a assistir esses focos graves, digamos, de instabilidade, como é no leste da RDC, como é no norte de Moçambique. Compete-nos a nós, enquanto comissão, levantarmos esses problemas. O Denis utilizou uma expressão de que no leste da RDC existem alguns problemas. Eu queria recordar que estão duas grandes cidades ocupadas. Não é brincadeira o que se está a passar ali assim. Morreram soldados da África do Sul. Nós tivemos que retirar os nossos observadores devido à segurança. Estão a exportar minérios daquele país. Outros países estão a exportar minérios daquele país em plena luz do dia. Chama-se isso roubo. Não há outra palavra. Portanto, não nos parece que sejam alguns problemas, Dani. Devemos chamar as coisas o seu verdadeiro nome. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Angola. That's very eloquent, articulate. Thank you for coming up. This is the kind of interventions we want. Actually, not in so many words, it relates or aligns with the submission by South Africa, really, the way I look at it, to some extent. But thank you very much. And let me, sorry, Zimbabwe, recognize the DRC.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole. Moi, j'avais plus des réflexions à faire. Comme la RDC n'a pas encore signé le protocole, je voulais savoir qu'est-ce qui, dans ce protocole, empêche la RDC de signer? Puisque nous sommes dans une situation difficile à l'Est. À un moment donné, nous avons vu que la SAMI, la SAMI RDC, enfin bon, en tout cas la SADC, a été assez proche et assez actif pour aider la RDC. Et soudainement, on a vu les troupes quitter le territoire. Je voudrais savoir qu'est-ce qu'il y a derrière tout ça et est-ce que c'est parce qu'on n'a pas signé le protocole? Et même si on signe le protocole, la situation est tellement dramatique. Je me demande ce que la SADC, à travers ses troupes et la coopération, pourra essayer de faire et combattre. Est-ce que vraiment les troupes de la SADC pourront être suffisamment efficaces pour pouvoir éradier cette guerre? Donc ça, c'est... Au niveau de la Mozambique, je vois que oui, il y a conflit aussi. Et eux, ils ont signé le protocole. Peut-être qu'il y a une stabilité. Je ne connais pas très bien la situation. Mais chez nous, en tout cas, c'est une situation qui dure depuis de longues années. Évidemment, il faut une volonté politique aussi pour que, pour que nous puissions tout ensemble, avec les États de l'Afrique australe, intervenir pour pouvoir mettre fin à cette guerre. Parce que je crois que effectivement, ce sont des pays, enfin, RDC est un pays extrêmement riche et qui pourrait créer un dynamisme économique pour toute la région. Et je crois que ce serait pour le bénéfice de tous. Alors, je ne comprends pas pourquoi est-ce que le protocole, jusqu'à maintenant, n'a pas été signé. Je ne comprends pas. Et qu'est-ce qui, dans ce protocole, fait que la RDC ne signe pas? Et qu'est-ce que nous, on pourrait apporter à ce protocole, en plus, supplémentaire, pour que nous puissions avancer? Merci.
Thank you so much, DRC. I think it's in line with what Angola was saying. How correct is this information that some of us may have not ratified, given that these are old, this is an old protocol. Perhaps it could be now that they have been ratified. I don't. It's a very good question. It boggles the mind. Why DRC would not ratify something that is going to help? It is a problem there. We all know. Why not ratify? But the question is this information correct? Maybe you'll attempt to throw some light, but I will thank you very much, DRC. Zimbabwe is next.
Thank you, Chair. I will not go further, but I want just to highlight one or two things. I want to know what is in the protocol for a country. If another country is attacked, the countries are attacked by an enemy, what does the other countries do to protect that country? Or if another country is disturbed, because we must know what is in the protocol. Or if there is none in that protocol that says if another country is attacked, another members must go and assist. I think it's high time that we make those model laws that enable other countries to assist a member when when there's danger or there are some disturbance in that country. I thank you.
Attack from where? From within SADC or external? Oh, okay, okay. Maybe please.
If elders are speaking, and it's so difficult for some of us who are young to add more salt to that. And I want to stand on the strength of my seniors that have spoken already and say that we must also do self-introspection as countries as to the situations that are taking place. Is it us creating it? Is it outside that creates that? And if it is outside creating that, let's assist each other. But if it is us creating it, let's self-reflect and re-strategize and go back to basics. Not to create unnecessary animosity. Because we already have outsiders who are troubling us because of our own things that we have in terms of all that. But as I've already said, I don't want to dilute what was said by the seniors. And let's just adopt what they have said if they have given us resolutions and the way forward. I so submit, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Namibia, for that. You are emphasizing on the need of unity and unity of purpose. And anyone else? Oh yes, mountain in the kingdom.
The kingdom in the sky. I think from what was being presented, largely on the objectives, I would gather that one of the objectives of this particular protocol, oh, by the way, this one I've seen that is legally binding somehow. So I think I'm a bit happy with that. Would be the consolidation and the maintenance of democracy and all human rights and the rule of law. And I think we have touched a little bit on the work of the TRICA and other organs like the OPDS, which work largely on the resolution of our conflicts and the political instabilities that may happen. But however, I would say the Troika and the other bodies seem to be working well, but the problem is with the countries, because now there's always delays when it comes to the offering of consent for interventions. And this affects largely the effectiveness of the SADC responses in countries that seem to have instabilities. One country may feel like these are my internal affairs, I can deal with them on my own, and then delay to give consent. And by the time they offer consent to the SADC to come and intervene in situations, we find that, hey, it's quite bad now. People are now losing lives and so on and so forth. And also, I think it is taking me back to the previous protocol on corruption, because this particular protocol also sits largely on the rule of law. And I've seen that in some countries, we do have this democratic deficits and also deficits in the rule of law, that sometimes we might postpone the protocol or not implement it fully because I'll say we, people in power, by the time we are in power, we postpone the rule of law and it seemed not to work on us. But as time goes, we find that such people have actually disturbed a lot in the country because we find ourselves treating ourselves as immune to the rule of law when we are in power. So I think I like this protocol a bit because it does even link the two at some point. I submit, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Lesotho. Anyone else? I follow your argument, sister, that the tendency is to allow issues to even escalate only to come when things have reached crisis proportions. Why are we not so proactive and early enough to prevent? I think this is your concern. And unless someone wants to come up with another intervention, it's clear. Maybe can you help respond?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honorable members. I'll attempt to respond to some of the issues which I know, but others then I'll have to consult, and then maybe I can come and provide further details once I've consulted experts in this area. First of all, to start with the situation in DRC, I agree. The situation in DRC is still a challenge, and I think I mentioned in the presentation that what was that? That sustained political and diplomatic initiatives are still required in the post-Sami DRC period. So yes, we withdrew from, as SADC, we withdrew because I think the mandate, those people who assessed what the situation on the ground, they thought that the mandate cannot be achieved in that manner, and they would rather take a more diplomatic and route to try to address the problems. And of course, there were other initiatives in place, diplomatic initiatives. There was the Luanda process, there was the Nairobi process. So, and then at some point, SADC and the EAC, they convened a summit. They came up with some proposals. It was agreed later on that the whole thing should now be handled by the African Union, under the African Union Peace and Security Architecture. But of course, SADC is still providing support, not military support, not deployment, but supporting that process, that diplomatic process of trying to reach some kind of peaceful resolution to the problem of Eastern DRC. There are other initiatives which have been undertaken by other parties, like the US. There was some kind of an agreement reached in the US. There was another agreement reached in Doha, Qatar. So all these agreements are actually aimed at trying to sort out the situation. But I just want to acknowledge that indeed we understand that the situation is still not okay, and the humanitarian situation is even worse. And we as SADC have tried to mobilize resources just to address the humanitarian crisis which is happening in Eastern DRC. The issue of the data about on ratification, I just want to assure honorable members that the data is 100% correct, that 11 member states have ratified and 5 member states, which I mentioned, are yet to ratify. Now, as I said earlier, the fact that you have not ratified a protocol does not mean that you would not necessarily participate in peace and security operations. So indeed, Angola has been actively participating in security and peace and security initiatives in Namibia, in Zimbabwe, and most recently in DRC. But they have not ratified the protocol. Now, coming to the question of, let's say, what is preventing DRC from ratifying, I think this is a question now we as SADC should be asking DRC and not the other way around. So I don't have the reasons. I think this is a broader issue, not only this protocol. There are a lot of other protocols where member states have not ratified. They have signed up to, meaning that they accept in principle the logic, the concept behind the protocol, but they have not ratified for various reasons. In some cases, maybe it's to do with consultations. They have not consulted, or there could be internal forces which are opposing to ratifying that specific protocol. So these are really a question which we need to ask the member state in question. Why have they not ratified? And if a protocol has come into force already, why have they not acceded now to that protocol? Because at this stage in time, I think it's accession. It's not really ratification, which is required by these 5 member states which have not are yet to ratify. The issue of what is there in the, I think this was raised by the honorable member from Zimbabwe. What is there in the protocol? If you read Article 2E and F, Article 2E of the protocol says, in terms of the objectives of the protocol, actually, it speaks to the specific objectives of the protocol. It speaks to Article 2E, prevent, contain, and resolve inter and intrastate conflict by peaceful means. So E speaks to peaceful means, meaning that the protocol is meant to prevent, contain, and resolve inter and intrastate conflict. Article 2F, consider enforcement action in accordance with international law and as a matter of last resort where peaceful means have failed. So where peaceful means have failed, then you have to consider issues like deployment, where now you have to really enforce peace, whether it's inter or intra-state conflicts. So the protocol is quite clear in terms of what member states should be doing when there are these kinds of conflicts. However, there is, this is something I wanted to mention, I think, there is, beyond the protocol, there is something we call the SADC Mutual Defense Pact of 2003, which was meant to operationalize the protocol. Unfortunately, I don't have I think it has not come into, no, it has come 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 member states have ratified that already, which means it has come into force. Again, we have, again, Angola, Madagascar, Comoros, and Seychelles, which have not, and DRC, the same, which have not ratified the protocol, have not ratified this Mutual Defense Pact. I don't really know the reason, but this Mutual Defense Pact is the one now which goes into the details of the objective of this pact is to operationalize the mechanisms of the organ for mutual cooperation in defense and security matters. And then if you go into the articles, there are issues of conflict resolution, there are issues of military preparedness, collective self-defense and collective action. So the details in terms of how you are going to operationalize the protocol are actually into this Mutual Defense Pact of 2003. Chair, I'm not sure if I've left out anything. Those are the responses I wanted to make. Acknowledging the problems in DRC and that there are efforts. SADC, despite deployment, SADC is still participating in a diplomatic manner to sort out those problems in line with other initiatives. The data, as I said, the data is 100% correct because I checked with our legal unit, which usually collects this data on signing, ratification of protocols and other legal instruments. And I checked yesterday evening, and this is the data, the very current data. The question with regards to why some of these member states are not ratifying, that I think is a question to the member states themselves. We as SADC, we have been pushing for governments to sign, we have been pushing for governments to ratify, but of course, as I said, there could be other reasons, internal reasons, which we are not aware of as to why they are not signing or ratifying. And as the last issue, which was to do with whether or not the protocol is meant to address these conflicts, whether peacefully or in some cases using action, that is very clear. The protocol is actually meant to address them. I think the secretary, I had a discussion with the secretary on some of these other issues. He may want to complement what I've said. Thank you.
So he comes in, the Lesotho, the kingdom in the sky, raised a concern. Why is it that we delay to respond where we were supposed to respond?
Close to the mic. Close to the mic, they are struggling to hear.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying thank you. Before the secretary comes in, maybe fill the gaps where there may be. Lesotho also raised a concern that we seem to be very slow and we're not that proactive to, well, I wouldn't use the word intervene. You cannot intervene, but to render the necessary assistance in terms of the protocol as early as possible to avoid only to come when there is now a crisis. You said so.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure of the intervention at what stage. As I said, we have a very, in my view, a very effective early warning system, which would be the starting point in terms of signaling that there could be a problem in this country. Let's say there could be a problem in Madagascar. There's a problem somewhere. There's a problem. There's a likely problem somewhere. So that's the first stage of where SADC comes in. The early warning center comes in and provides signals. Now, once there is a conflict, a fully fledged conflict, and maybe that conflict requires deployment, then you have other challenges, logistical challenges, because now you have to mobilize the forces. That takes time. We didn't have a regional, that depot, which I was talking about. It was not fully, it was almost non-existent. So the member states who would be volunteering to their armed forces have to deploy, have to mobilize. It takes time. I'm not an expert in this area, but I'm sure experts will tell you that it takes time to mobilize. So when it comes to deployment of forces, definitely it takes time. It requires resources which you might not have at that particular point in time. I remember for the case of Samim and even Sami DRC, you had to have these meetings to try and mobilize resources from member states, which were not forthcoming as timely as we would have wanted. So all these logistical challenges come in when it comes to deployment of let's say, forces. But even in other situations where it's not about military deployment, even in other situations where, let's say, you have disasters as a result of other natural causes, maybe there are floods, maybe there are droughts where we want to intervene, the same logistical challenges will be faced. Fortunately, now we have a center in Mozambique which deals with the Center for Humanitarian Issues. Hopefully, having that center, and if it's fully resourced, maybe it will shorten the time for interventions. But initially, we didn't have a center. So again, you need to convene meetings. You need to explain the situation. You need to have member states come up with contributions. You need to mobilize resources. You need to mobilize equipment. So it usually takes a bit of time, but I'm sure we are heading towards some improvement in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for those responses. I will give a chance to our secretary, but I may point out that with my experience here in the forum, and I remember the last time I think we were in the DRC, the issue, the unfortunate issue, matter of the Eastern DRC is very much concerning. And we were in a plenary session, took the whole day, and we never came to something conclusive. It's complicated, and we very much sympathize with this situation. It's unfortunate that at some point it becomes politicized instead of helping, pointing fingers to that one and that one. In the recent case, South Africa had even to suffer casualties there, fatalities. So I think the will is there to assist, but whether it's effective, that's another point. But it wouldn't make, we would be doing justice ourselves to raise it in a more polite, diplomatic way with plenary. This matter should not be left to die on its own. It's bad enough for the region. But on the question of ratification, these are just my comments. It's not that there are answers to what has been raised. Ratification. He is right, Angola, that why talk about ratification when we have been involved in operations? Anyway, that has been answered, I think. But what I would propose, Secretary and committee members, this issue of ratification should not be a big one. That's why in the joint committee meetings, I raised the issue of a focal point, a department or section in our countries to look on all protocols, treaties, and see that they are ratified in time. The experience even back home, if I may, not in bad faith as usual, it comes at the 11th hour, if it comes at all. Someone is sleeping on the job somewhere. Unfortunately, it affects the whole country, the whole security of the region at the end of the day. It's just a comment. I think it's been taken on the joint committee meetings, that point of ensuring that we ratify. Do you want to, because this issue has been bothering us time and again. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be raised again, and it will be now that we have it on paper. We will have to report something on. We can express our concern that we don't seem to be getting where we want to, despite the comprehensiveness and the good intentions of the protocol. Could I want to say something? You know, this thing has been there all the time.
Thank you, Chair. I think part of the success of our interaction with the SADC Secretariat is to get information such as this, where sometimes there is no contradiction and countries are already active, but they have not done what needs to be done in terms of ratification. And as you said, part of it is actually maybe just administrative oversight. And these issues need to be flagged so that they are dealt with, because the ratification is a requirement as part of the entire framework. Honorable Chair, the specific intervention I would want to make is the one that my colleague Dennis spoke to, and it's something that we had discussed, and I would want to draw the attention of the honorable members. Yesterday, when we looked at the protocol against corruption, one of the things that the committee agreed on was to say, this is an old protocol, and a lot has happened in between. And there is need to possibly consider reviewing or to speak to recommendations around reviewing to bring it up to speed with the reality. So I want to make a similar submission to the committee in terms of the protocol on politics, defense, and security cooperation. That is the region's blueprint in terms of peace and security. When you look at the regional economic communities of Africa, SADC is arguably the most stable. And this is not by chance. It's the leadership, is the investment that has been made to address issues of peace and security. But the reality is that since 2001, the security landscape is evolving. So those that are security experts, like the general, will know that there have been serious shift in terms of the dynamics of security. And we may need to reflect in terms of, is it not necessary to unify these threats or to align the protocol with that new reality so that it comprehensively speaks to the emerging security threats? So when you look at the beginning of the turn of the century, which is the time when this protocol was adopted, there has been a shift where, while focus on territorial security is important, one of the biggest threats that we face now center around human security. And the protocol, obviously because of the dynamic of time, does not sufficiently address issues from a human security perspective. And I'm going to put forward 2-3 areas that the committee may wish to reflect on. The first one is the climate change, security threats that center around the climate change. And I call security threat in this submission a threat multiplier, in the sense that climate change exacerbates or worsens existing security threats. We see the vulnerabilities being not only ignited, but being exacerbated. And this range from issues of environmental stress, where prolonged droughts sometimes trigger conflicts in country in terms of communities. This region has been a victim of droughts, climate-induced droughts. And these have far-reaching effects, including on the economy and including on the vulnerabilities of communities And this actually has become a real threat of national consequence. The issues of cyclones. We saw what happened with Cyclone Idai, which hit 3-4 countries of the region. The magnitude of destruction of infrastructure, destabilization in communities, issues of hygiene and health. And then, of course, this issue that both South Africa and I think DRC and even the general spoke about, the correlation between the conflicts we see in certain of our communities and the issues of economic, natural resource governance. These have actually become serious threats for the peace of the region. And therefore, the committee may wish to consider, say, let's look at the issue of climate change and environment-related threats. The other threat that I wish to highlight is cybersecurity and digital threats. What we must realize, honorable members, and our states are dealing with this, including sometimes having to spend serious resources. Cyber threats are transboundary, they are borderless. And they require new set of skills, new set of infrastructure, investments, and this requires a reflection to say, would it not be important for our peace and security blueprint to include this? Then the issue of digital disinformation. You are our political leaders, and I'm sure you are experiencing this in varying degrees in your country. Sometimes disinformation, particularly during elections, it's actually part of what is causing the upheavals that you're seeing in election, where it's virtually difficult to distinguish between what is true and what is not. If you are my political rival, I can clone your voice, where you're actually saying, I wish to thank the people of my constituents that have given me enough opportunity to serve. I'm not going to stand now, when you're actually in the midst of campaigning. And these threats take various forms, including dimensions that will actually undermine the stability of a country. The third aspect relates to what we were talking about already, particularly in Cabo Delgado, the issue of terrorism and violent extremism, where we have seen these terrorist groups sometimes leveraging on structural problems that are already in existence, where, for instance, we're already having issues of underdevelopment, issues of natural resource governance. They come and leverage that to entrench terrorist activities within communities, and the impact on humanity in terms of the individuals, women, girls, and children. That too needs to be reflected upon. Dennis mentioned the efforts that have already gone underway, including the development of the regional strategy, counterterrorism strategy, including the establishment of the center. But what we are calling for, or the submission, is to say, let's integrate this so that it's viewed not as a separate issue, but part of the gamut of security issues that we need to address. And therefore, the protocol must speak to all these things as a unified document. Then the last one relates to public health emergencies. Honorable members, when COVID-19 came, its effects during and after, in the aftermath, is worse than what some wars have done in terms of damage. And we need our regional peace and security blueprint to speak to this issue. It affects, there is direct health impact, the issues of economic disruption, political instability, and even security threats that are actually emerging because of the health emergencies. And therefore, these are emerging security issues, and my submission to the committee is that there could be merit in you considering making a recommendation to say, let's review and update so that we have a consolidated a blueprint, a regional blueprint that speaks to all these regional security threats. Those are my submissions, Chair.
Thank you so much, Secretary. I don't know if there's anything to add. Okay. But what the Secretary is saying, 2 decades ago, it applies to the anti-corruption protocol, applies to this one. He's putting it across to us. Don't we think it would be progression and development if we made a recommendation to the effect, or we discussed it ourselves amongst us to the effect that since then, in a dynamic environment, things have changed. For instance, I may ask, I may not be too sure, the issues of climate change, were they included to the issues of digitalization, were they included? In other words, the spirit of what the Secretary is saying, a lot may have evolved over time. And it would not be out of order if we erase that with plenary so that we make way forward. We are one here who would want to remain one and be sympathetic to each other's problems. The bit Mozambique is not here. Mozambique is one such country that has been suffering. It's a very promising state, but all efforts in development are being just hampered by climate change and also terroristic activities. We can't allow that. An injury in one is an injury to us all. But I'll, before he reacts, call on Namibia, please.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I agree with all the sentiments shared by the Secretary of the Committee. I reflected back to my own country. I do not know, Mr. Kurasha, whether you were in Namibia 3 or 4 weeks back when Etosha National Park burnt. The misinformation cost us more in our country. It was created by drought, and then the fire just erupts from somewhere. We don't know how, but there is a culprit. And that causes environmental stress, because there are wild animals in the park, and it affected everything. But what cost us more is the misinformation from is it our own people? Is it from outside? And that's where the cyberbullying and cyber information and cyber security issues comes in. I'm in a committee of information, and they were busy as I'm here with looking at what we could do with the cybersecurity threats that are there. But it's an international thing that you cannot have control over it. But at least if you can have the basics and understand the basics, because it will threat all of us. Last year, December, our main telecommunications office was, I don't know what they did, and all the information was all over. That's how it went. Very, very bad. Very, very bad. That's one. Now, the devastating cyclones. We are not at a state of cyclones in our country, but we have floods, which is a threat. And it comes with finances. And who are the ones helping out at last? It's the defense forces that have to come in and assist with everything. It's always the security sector that comes in handy. With the resource conflicts, as mentioned by Mr. Kurasha, the minerals is problematic. If we look at Mozambique, it's a mineral issue. They have a mineral issue, but then they have also floods, cyclones. And they are always attacked, under attack with those things. You necessarily don't need any person to attack you, but the environment is of such a type nowadays that you do not know whether you are alive the next moment you are dead. And therefore, I would agree with the sentiments of Mr. Kurasha, our secretary, and agree with Chairperson that we bring it to plenary. But before the plenary, my apologies, before plenary, I think as a committee, we must have a session with at least one security sector of our country to, is it market or to sell the idea of a regional blueprint that must be reviewed in terms of the peace and security in this region. And I think that any shortcoming is a security threat, whether it's hunger, whether it's health, because you know that it deals with emotions, and where emotions comes in, it's anger. People don't listen to each other, and who must come in? It's the security sector, even a security guard that stands there to come and now calm us down. So therefore, Chairperson, I think hand in hand with our countries, political will is there, I believe. The political will is there. I don't doubt it anytime. But we must communicate with each other, not to have misunderstandings later, and to assist each other, following each other as we are moving forward. So therefore, Chairperson, let's have a session and let's go fully to the plenary assembly, but a session with our security sectors in our countries, probably to sell the idea to them that we are here now. We are no longer in the olden days where things were smooth, but we are now running with the times, and it's faster running ahead of us. Therefore, we need to redress and address the regional blueprint in the peace and security sector. I so submit.
Thank you so much, Namibia. In fact, the reason why our countries, our respective countries, have sent us to participate in these joint and committee meetings is to go back in our respective countries, like as you rightly point out, confer with our security cluster and have them on board as well. We are representing them, they are not here. So I think it's a point to be taken. Well, whether that is possible to be done and completed before plenary, that's something else. But one point strong, plenary has to be sensitized, conscientized strongly on this matter. That's where we feel if we talk peace, security in the region, that is where we should be strong.
Sure.
In short, you're agreeing with the points raised by our esteemed secretary. You're just making additional information, but he wants to add more.
Share very brief. So I think the proposal that we could put for the committee is to Dennis is to propose for the director of the organ, if it is possible, at some point to come and interact with the committee, so that they are updated and the issues they are ventilating are put on the table, including the proposed advocacy for updating and unifying the peace and security blueprint.
I like that one. In fact, I made comment before we started that I was expecting people from the organ, and the director of the organ is the right person. If we're crying out these tears to them, it would make all the sense even before we go to plenary. But there may be no time. They are held up, not that they have kind of dumped us, no. There is always a chance. There is always a tomorrow. I think it's a strong one. Let us have the director on defense, politics, etc., come and have a joint discussion with them. It would be more effective than security clusters at our respective government. Thank you. We were getting there. Anything to add before we proceed or reflect on?
No, just to support the idea of maybe incorporating these other security threats into the protocol. The protocol as it exists now, if you read through the articles and the objectives, it's purely about interstate and intrastate conflicts and how those can be addressed. So these other issues of pandemics, other issues like disasters caused by cyclones, which are a result maybe of climate change, issues of cybersecurity, they are not covered in this year. Yeah, so that probably is important. However, we have to be mindful that what we need to bring here are the security implications of these things, because there are other protocols and other frameworks which speak to the protocol on health, which will speak to pandemics, the protocol on environmental management, which will speak to some of these things. There are strategies to do with fourth industrial revolution. There are strategies to do dealing with disaster. So you have to only, as far as peace and security is concerned, you have to only sort of extract those implications, security implications, while understanding that there are other frameworks out there which address the same issues. I submit, Chair.
Thank you. That's a relevant response too, that there are other areas where what we're mourning about could be addressed. But how good it is to have some of those things under one house. And we think the protocol should reflect those. The protocol on defense security mechanism is critical. Let them reflect those things as well, even though there may be specific laws here and there, as you have indicated.
Thank you, Chair. The next one, and maybe the final one for this committee, is the revised SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. I think yesterday there was some discussion partly on some of the components of these guidelines. Now, this is not a protocol. It's not a legal instrument for that matter. So we are not going to give the status in terms of signing and ratification and all that. So, but what are the objectives of these guidelines? These are very recent guidelines. So one is to promote and enhance adherence by each member state to the SADC treaty and the protocol on politics, defense, and security cooperation. But we also want to promote and enhance adherence to the principle of the rule of law. So the rule of law, quite important there. Promote the holding of regular, free and fair, transparent, credible, and peaceful democratic elections. So the issues of elections come in. And then enhance electoral integrity by providing a basis for comprehensive, accurate, and impartial observation of national elections, the issue of the observation missions. Promote electoral justice and best practices in the management of elections and mitigation of election-related conflicts. And then encourage gender balance and equality and ethnic and religious diversity in governance and development. And lastly, promote the development of inclusive political institutions and enhancement of civil and political rights. So those are the objectives of these guidelines, which are quite critical. Now, what I would like to provide here, as I said, it's not the status of ratification, but because these are not really legal instruments, but what we have observed over time now. One, SADC has consistently deployed SEOMs. These are the SADC Electoral Observer Missions, in line with the revised SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. So that's a positive point, that we have consistently deployed. Now, not as SADC PF, but as SADC. Two, while the region has made progress in consolidating democracy, this is the general kind of feel, some member states still experienced post-election tensions, promoting conflict prevention and mediation. There are examples, maybe we don't have to go into those specific examples, but here we are saying 4 election-related petitions and court battles surfaced in Mozambique, Namibia, and South Africa during the 2024 electoral missions. These are just things to note. We have there a table which shows elections since 2019 to 2024, the number of elections, the SEOM's deployment, and those are the member states which actually had elections during those specific years. Now, what are we saying generally as a result of these election missions? One, we are saying most member states are slow in implementing recommendations made by the observation missions. So you go to a country A, you observe. The elections might still be free and fair, but there are issues here and there where the mission reports would highlight at the end of the mission. What happens that you come 5 years down the line where there is another election, you had 12 recommendations, only one of them has been implemented. So that's something which the election people, when speaking with these people who participate in these election missions, they have been citing that it's a bit frustrating. And they have cited a few examples. They are saying, for example, the issue of funding of political parties. So whenever they go to these elections, they get this as an issue, whereby especially the opposition parties are not funded accordingly, according to the law. But you go to the next cycle of elections, the same problem. There's the issue, another example which was cited, access at polling stations for people with disabilities. They have the right to vote, but this issue of access is a problem. So you go into a country X, it's you come up with this recommendation. 5 years down the line, when they do another election, you find the same problem. So that is an issue which came up, that some of these recommendations are not taken up by member states. The other challenge, of course, is the funding. The issue of funding. This is a common issue. Funding of the missions and the activities of the SADC Electoral Advisory Council is a challenge, and member states have not adopted funding modalities for elections between 2027 and 2030, the forthcoming elections. Essentially what they're saying here, to a large extent, these missions are still funded by international cooperating partners. And when member states meet, whether in council or summit, there's always that push and saying, why don't we fund it themselves? But then the modality of funding is still a challenge. Another observation was that in the past 5 years, voter turnout hovered around 60%, indicating moderate electoral participation, and therefore there's room for improvement in terms of strengthening, so as to strengthen democratic governance. Because if you have low voter turnout, that also sends a very negative kind of picture in terms of maybe what is the problem if people are not interested in voting. I think those are the only observations which I wanted to bring about in as far as these guidelines is concerned, and what we have been observing on the ground in the various elections which have been taking place are concerned. I submit, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. But before the members make interventions here and there, I will call upon this secretary, our committee secretary, to add or modify some
Sure.
points there.
Sure. Thank you. May I be able to share, colleagues? Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. Once again, honorable members, I want to okay, yes, it's visible. I wanted to draw the attention of the honorable members to a very important issue in terms of the issue of the revised SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic election, and put into perspective the role that SADC PF has played through this committee in this process, so that as we make our recommendations, we do so emanating from a perspective of the work that you have done in the past. The issue of elections, remember when we started yesterday, is one of those where we spend a lot of time reflecting on the issue of observation. And so when you look at I call this an overview of the instruments used in elections in the SADC region. When you look at, we start at global level, where in 1948, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And then 1966, the International Convent Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR. Then back to the continent. In 1981, we have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. From 1981, that whole decade until 2000, there was nothing that was happening until the SADC Parliamentary Forum in 2001 adopted the norms and standards for elections in the SADC region. So the issue of elections, including promotion of democratic elections, is a forte for SADC PF. You must take this credit and no need to have borrowed meekness or humility about it. You have provided leadership in this region. I mentioned yesterday that even when your request for transformation was being rejected, they said, please concentrate on the good things that you are doing, including observing elections. So we actually were the pioneers of norm making. When the region didn't have a single instrument, the parliamentarians were the one that developed the first election instrument in the SADC region. And thereafter, to confirm the leadership role, you see what I may characterize as a proliferation of instruments. It's like you started a fire and others then caught the wave. So in 2002, the continent took a cue from what the region had done through parliamentarians. So we see the OAU then declaration on the principles and governing democratic elections in Africa. Then in 2003, we see the electoral commissions and civil society coming up with the principles for election management, monitoring, and observation in the SADC region. In 2004, SADC then developed the first principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. And when that happened, the expectation was that this was an opportunity for the region to unify all the practices that were already in motion since the norms and standards were adopted by the parliamentarians in 2001. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So at political level, there was no question that the SADC principles and guidelines had a higher political force, because this is being done at summit level. But when you look at the content, it missed opportunities, for instance, because as Dennis said, these are mere principles and guidelines. But there were already in existence obligations that are contained in the treaty, that are contained in the protocol on politics, defense, and security cooperation. So you needed to draw a direct linkage so that these guidelines were facilitating implementation or realization of obligations that were already contained in the higher instruments. That wasn't the case. The other issue was, it even said, in the event that a member state invites a SADC observer mission, so it was not even obligatory that a member state could invite the observer mission. Secondly, by that time, we had moved from short-term observation to long-term observation. Like I said yesterday, when we were talking about the duration of missions, I think it was an issue that General Sebastião had raised. And I said, part of the criticism is that we come in 2 days, are in our hotels, and we produce very extensive commentary on the process. And people are asking, where did you get this when you were only here for a few days? So the principles and guidelines were only providing for 2 weeks, a maximum of 2 weeks. And yet the practice of long-term observation was already in place. So it was the parliamentarians through this committee that led the process of engaging with SADC through the organ to say, why don't we unify the same conversation we are having about the protocol? Why don't we unify the practices that are already taking place based on the emerging trends? so that we leverage the political force with the things that are actually already happening in the ground. And we gained traction so between 2011 and 2015, SADC PF through the committee were involved in two important processes. The first one was the review of the strategic indicative development plan for the organ, which was called SIPO-1, which we were revising to become SIPO-2. Secondly, it was the revision of the 2004 principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. And on both ends, parliamentarians scored very high because in 2015, we were able to revise the principles and guidelines to accommodate the things that we are talking about. And it was after that revision, when through the recommendation of the committee, the plenary assembly then adopted a decision to say, let's now develop a model law on elections to assist member states to be able to implement the provisions of the revised principles and guidelines. So you look at 2015, we have the revised principles and guidelines. From 2015, that the decision was then made to say, let's develop a model law. So specifically in 2016, the plenary adopted the resolution. In 2016, 2017, 2018, we developed the model law on elections. And it is the primary implementation tool if you want to close the legislative gap in terms of translating what is in the principles and guidelines into your law. So, honorable members, again, you need to take credit as this committee because it was through your work that member states were assisted in how could they, in practical terms at national level, translate the revised principles into their national legislation. And between 2018 and now, we've been advocating for the domestication of the model law. Dennis, when he was presenting, he presented the 2021 version. This emanates from the need to integrate the experiences of health emergencies in elections to build resilience after the COVID-19 experience. When COVID-19 came, no one had run elections during COVID. In most of the countries, there were emergency laws that had been triggered. There was no clarity in the first place to say, does this emergency extend to also not holding elections? So those conversations started being held, and that's how the region, through the revision in 2021, was giving guidance to say, we need to embed the resilience in the way we manage elections, including during health emergencies. Secondly, what it also covers is what, if you remember, honorable members who were in the committee with the committee for a while, I think 2 committees back, we had a presentation where we were looking at electoral risks in the SADC region, where we were looking at issues like disinformation, the issues of cyber attacks and the risks around elections. Those again are integrated in the revision that took place in 2021. So as you reflect on the presentation that Dennis has made, it is important for you to do so within the context of your advocacy for the domestication of the model law on elections, because it essentially is an instrument for the domestication of the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. Lastly, one of the things that happened in 2018 when we did the model law on elections, I don't think that the issues of cyber threats and cyber security were as pronounced as they are. So when you look at the model law on elections, one of the areas where it also needs updating relates to issues of cyber threats to elections. And I think it's a matter that we must also take as an active matter and possibly as a recommendation to say the model law needs to be reviewed to update it with regards to issues of ICT, digital tools, and cyber threats in elections. I submit, Chair.
Thank you so much, Secretary, for adding value, complementing what our resource person has already presented before us. Open the floor for discussion, engagement, interventions. Anyone wanting to say anything? South Africa?
Thank you, Chair. Let's start by appreciating the presentation from Dennis, but also the eloquent manner in which the Secretary has articulated issues that speaks to the degree to which members of this committee that played a critical role as pace setters. The presentation clearly maps the evolution that speaks to the elections principles management, but more than that, the intervention that the SADC-PF has made right from the first time that it introduced the principles and guideline. The last point, Chair, is to indeed rise to agree with the Secretary that the protocol on modern law and elections has to be re-looked at and revised to specifically speak to the issue of ICT, a digital tool, but more than that, also the cyber threat to the election. Thank you, Chair.
DRC, thank you, South Africa.
Merci pour la parole. J'ai entendu le secrétaire dire que quand il y a eu la période de Covid, il y avait un débat qui disait que peut-être on pouvait reporter les élections et tout ça. Et que, oui, voilà, reprendre les élections. Et que là-dessus, vous aviez dû quand même revoir un peu les principes, hein. Mais moi, je voulais ajouter quelque chose, c'est qu'il faut aussi tenir compte du fait qu'il y a certains pays aussi, comme nous, en guerre, et il y a un petit débat qui commence à s'ouvrir en se disant, ben, il y a quand même tout l'Est de la RDC qui est en guerre, comment est-ce qu'on peut envisager les élections? Ça, c'est aussi un débat qui commence à s'ouvrir dans le pays. Parce que quand même, tout l'Est, ça constitue 1/5 du pays. Voilà, donc comment est-ce qu'on peut aborder ce sujet? Merci.
Thank you, TRC. Anyone else from the floor? It looks like we have only two interventions, our secretary and the resource person will respond. I don't know, who do I start with? Let me start with you, Dennis. Then he can compliment you wherever.
No, thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I don't think there's much to say. I totally agree that we have to incorporate these issues of ICT and digital tools, cybersecurity in the framework of how we manage our elections. So I totally agree with that one. The issue raised by DRC, that I also agree that there are situations where you cannot hold an election for various reasons. Even if you borrow an example of what is happening in Ukraine, they are under a situation whereby they cannot have an election and it's acceptable. So if you have a huge population or a huge area of a country which is under conflict and you cannot have elections, I don't see any contradiction there. That's at least for me, that's quite justifiable. But on a more general kind of note, I would, I think as there is something which I missed in the presentation. No, I think I did mention it. That's as Secretariat and as SADC, I think we have been in this area of elections. We have tried to play our part in terms of observing and advising, recommending member states on how they can address some of the shortfalls in the elections. We still see challenges here and there, like the recent ones in URT. So I think we need to really look into what are these problems really? Why do we have these issues? Why do we still have these issues? We have these guidelines very clear. Why do we still have conflicts here and there when it comes to elections, and come up with very concrete suggestions on what needs to be done? So with those few remarks, Chair, I think I submit.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I will not comment on the issue of the incorporation of provisions around digital tools. I want to speak to the question that Honorable Ndokwa spoke to, the issue of holding elections during conflicts, including during war, and highlight the fact that when you look at the role of election, the elections are actually integrated as part of conflict resolution. So if you look at the African Peace and Security Architecture, it has different elements, including issues of mediation, which is part of your diplomacy. It has element of military intervention, your standby force. It has the elements of using elections to resolve conflicts. So if you have looked in countries where the UN has been involved and countries go through transition, usually all transitions conclude with elections. And the extent to which elections contribute to democratization is dependent on their credibility. And usually, if elections are compromised, their ability to contribute to democracy gets compromised. In other words, whether or not elections are actually contributing to democracy is a function of the perception around the credibility of those elections. And if elections are compromised, they usually also become a spoiler. And so context will differ. So emergencies, sometimes if you have elections for the sake of having elections, if there's a war, for instance, what are you seeking to achieve? So sometimes they would then say, you want electoral outcomes or electoral victories on top of dead bodies. So the context must be understood. And I'm speaking generally, not specifically. And the other very important aspect that I also wanted to raise, honorable members, is that what we often characterize as electoral conflicts or electoral violence is only electoral because it is happening during election. But otherwise, this violence is always there, and this conflict is always there. So that's why we must view elections as part of a whole package. If it was a tree, elections are like a branch. If it was a forest, elections are like a tree. Often we look at them in isolation, but elections alone are not democracy. They are not synonymous with democracy. They contribute to democracy, but they are not democracy. So often elections themselves become victims of broader democratic issues that are unresolved. If they had a spokesperson, elections would even say, but we are also being victimized because we see things that are unrelated to us and manifesting when we are happening. So you have to make a distinction of whether it's electoral violence or violence during elections or elections during violence. And for this committee, I think that question is very important so that we broaden the discussion. Sometimes we are quick to want to get to elections because we imagine that that's how we settle. The victor take their mendo, the losers must eschew their loss. But it often does not work like this. And that's why if you look at, for instance, countries where SADC has been involved in the region in terms of mediation, and they have concluded with elections, Madagascar is one of them. SADC has also been in Lesotho. SADC has also been in Zimbabwe. We need to look at that and say, to what extent have the structural issues been addressed? Then we are able to say elections have successfully helped us to transition. But where the structural issues have not been addressed, sometimes you find yourself coming back to where you started. So for members of this committee, because it's your mandate, your mandate stretches to democratization, governance. It's important that when we look at issues of elections, we look at them in perspective because they are part of a package. I submit, Chair.
Thank you both, the presenter and the comment by the secretary. It looks like we have done justice to ourselves up to this far. And as I indicated when we started our meeting, it's our intention, and it remains so, that it should be this far we can go with our meeting. There is one aspect that is left, the evaluation, and maybe way forward before we close. But I would rather at this time we go for tea. What is the time now?
12 past 11.
Yeah, so we can come back, say
not done yet.
Not done yet.
I had a few things to, just 5 minutes.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Now or after tea?
It depends on what.
Maybe we can go
Maybe
for
we can
tea
do it
then
now.
Wow, okay, all right. But we check.
Okay, let's go for tea. It's now, what, 10 past?
12 past.
Huh?
12 past 11. We get, maybe we up to 11:30.
Yeah, up to 11. Then we'll continue. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. You'll get 5 minutes. You'll get it. Thank you, Chair. It has been going on very well.
So we go this evaluation.
Yes, we'll do the evaluation and then we'll conclude. Dennis, evaluation, and then we'll conclude.
Okay, thank you.
Is everything in? To have this one in and everything, which must be in. How many did you take? Sorry. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorables, let me call the meeting to order once more. The last call now. Our resource person, Dennis, will now take us, unless there's something else he wants to tell us. It should be on the last item, which is evaluation.
It's not him.
Oh, okay, it's someone.
He wants to make submission.
Oh,
before
then,
we move to
and then there will be someone else. Okay. Sorry. He is not yet finished with what he told us. He wants to conclude that ceremoniously. Will you please, Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. There's just one more, just two, it won't take even 2 minutes. So we we covered, there was 3 selected, 2 protocols and 1 like a framework, which we were supposed to cover and address in this session. But I thought, I just wanted to, members of parliament, just to take note of the following, that there are some other very key protocols, at least for this committee, which I thought I'm not going to cover them, but I'm just going to mention and speak to the status in terms of ratification and signing. So the first protocol, I don't know if this falls under this committee or it falls under the TIFI one. It has implications for both. It's the protocol on the facilitation of movements of persons. It has some security implications, but it also helps to achieve trade and things like that. A very important protocol. But as of now, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 member states which have ratified this protocol. So it's not in force yet, but it's an important protocol. I thought that I should bring that to the attention of the members. Another one is the protocol on the interstate transfer of sentenced offenders. I think this is also quite important in terms of security in the region. So interstate transfer of sentenced offenders. Quite a number of member states have signed up to this one, but only one, Mozambique, has ratified. So this is also just to bring to the attention of the honorable members.
Mauritius ratified. Mauritius is ratified.
Mauritius has ratified.
Not Mozambique.
Oh, sorry, Mauritius, yes. Sorry, sorry for that. It's Mauritius which has ratified. The other one is an agreement amending the protocol on extradition of 2019. This is an agreement. So there was a protocol and then an agreement amending that protocol. It's only Madagascar which has acceded to that agreement. But again, it looks as if it's also an important protocol, extradition of 2019. No. Now this one I have to be careful. I have a feeling that this one was already the original protocol, because this is the agreement. So the protocol itself is already in force. But there was an agreement amending the protocol, which has been signed by those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 member states. That's the agreement amending the protocol. Just to take note of that. And then the next one is agreement regarding the status of the SADC standby force and components and its components deployed within the region for purposes of training, peace support operations, exercises, and humanitarian assistance. At least this, I think, is a follow-up to what we had been talking about in terms of the standby force and the issues of deployment. So there is an agreement regarding that status. It has only been signed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 member states. So basically the message I'm trying to send out here is that there are other pieces of very important legislation which also need to be pursued. But it seems as if so far we are still lagging behind as member states in either signing or ratifying these legal instruments. And I think that's all I wanted to present, Chair. Because oh, there's another one, very important. Protocol against trafficking persons. A few member states have signed, no ratification as we speak. So this is the issue of human trafficking, which I think is important. But again, you see that we are slow in terms of ratifying this one. And I think that's the last one as well. The first one. I can share this presentation, but the first one was facilitation of movement of persons. Is that the one? But I can share with the presentation so that you get this information. Basically, this is Chair was just meant for information that there are other pieces of legislation which we're also lagging behind in terms of ratifying, either signing and ratifying, and therefore they are not in force as we speak. And yeah, thank you very much.
There was a slide on conclusion that you were talking to, but then we hijacked to slide 1.
Oh. Okay. The conclusion was not nothing new. I think we had discussed these issues on day 1 and day 2, if I'm not mistaken. What I was saying in the conclusion was that yes, on the conclusion, I was saying that ratification and accession remains a challenge in most of these. And as we said in day 1, in some member states, ratification is under the responsibility of the executive branch of government, while in most member states, ratification is under the responsibility of parliament. The executive, however, in both cases, plays an important role to ensure that the process of initiation is concluded in both instances. If the executive does not submit a SADC protocol to parliament, ratification will not happen. But we are also emphasizing that parliament can play a role in advocating for SADC protocols to be tabled for ratification in cases where the executive is not keen or is slow to submit the protocols to parliament for ratification. And we're saying even where ratification falls under the mandate of the executive, parliament can advocate for the executive to ratify these protocols, which a member state has signed on. So the parliamentary role can be invoked using its oversight and representative mandate to advocate for the ratification of SADC protocols. So that's basically what we had in the conclusion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Denson. Although you thought or you indicated that this was just for our information, it's very useful. Thank you for sharing it with us, as we have requested and maybe suggested by your good self. Share it with us, Secretary. It's good information for our oversight, that one. Now we come to the last item. I don't know who's doing it. Yes, that is the evaluation assessment on integration topics and SADC PF processes by members of parliament to assess the knowledge gained, understanding improved, and perspectives enhanced among regional integration topics and SADC Parliamentary Forum processes following the standing committee session. I'm not seeing Ronald here. He should be the one. Is he here or what?
He is.
Well, let him come and take us through this one. Thank you.
Maybe as he's coming, Ronald, you will lead the process. Maybe as is ready, honorable members, just to explain that this evaluation, just like the pre-assessment we did, is part of the project, that 1.4 million euro project, where one of the areas we are focusing on is capacitating honorable members in areas of regional integration, from the SADC agenda to the protocols, and we want to see if the process was beneficial. Over to you, Ronald.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair. Just to avoid impersonation, my name is Ishmael Chuposya. I'm not Ronald. Ronald is the gentleman walking in front of you. I'll be with him collaboratively, taking you through the post-assessment survey. So I'm sure a good number of you are familiar with this, given that we did it at the beginning of the standing sessions. Ronald is on the floor to assist us with any technical glitches that we may suffer. So if you're having difficulties, kindly raise your hand to be able to connect to the Menti. In the next few minutes, at least all of us should be on this page of the survey. So my suggestion is that we try and move at the same pace today. It's a very short, brief survey. It shouldn't take too much of your time. So if you're having difficulties, kindly raise your hand and we'll come and assist you.
Electoral college only has 8 candidates. We don't want the rigging that happened in the main.
I think we need to elect the Independent Electoral Commission to oversee.
Staff of parliaments, you are free to also participate in the evaluation.
Okay, are we all on the same page? Just a few seconds. Okay, it looks like we're all set. Maybe with one more. Okay. So the purpose of the survey, I think that has already been shared, as you can read onto your screens. The next section should read section 1. Just waiting for our screens to change. This is where you're being informed of the need for you to answer the questions on your background. So press next after you've seen that. This is where now you select your countries. So you have the different options there. Kindly select one and then you simply press submit at the bottom. Okay. If you have answered that question, then the next question is asking about your role in Parliament, whether you're a member of Parliament or a staff member of Parliament, and so on and so forth. Please select one option and submit. Okay. If you have done so, the next question should be about your gender. So there are two options, male or female. The chairperson of the Electoral College may verify. There are 26 responses. So we have an equal number of male and females in the room, it would seem. Okay. Yes. The next section then is about your political party affiliation. So you have the options there of whether you're from the ruling, the opposition, independent, or any other. Again, just select one option and submit accordingly. If you have submitted, the next section is asking for your years of experience in Parliament. So this is years of experience in your national Parliament. There are 3 options there, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 10 plus 15 years. You may select the option that is appropriate to you and press submit. If you have answered that question, you should be seeing the screen asking you about years working on the SADC regional integration agenda. So again, you have options of 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10, 10 plus years. And this would include years that you may have been working on the SADC agenda, perhaps before you became a member of parliament. But we just want to assess whether you have had, what sort of period have you been engaging on regional integration issues? If you have answered that one, the next question is on your previous training on SADC regional integration agendas. And here, there could be different trainings. You were receiving trainings on a protocol, a strategy, on a policy of SADC, and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be all of them in this session. It may have been previously as well. So you just have to indicate whether yes or no you have had any trainings on SADC regional integration. If you have answered that one, the next question should be, how long do you think you've been, not do you think, but how long have you been a member of SADC PF? So now looking at your interaction with the SADC Parliamentary Forum, where do you rank in terms of your years of experience with the SADC PF? You select one option and you submit. If you have answered that question, the next section is now looking at your knowledge assessment. Are we all at the same level? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So here, we're looking at just trying to gauge your knowledge levels on the different regional integration issues. And if you kindly press next at the bottom of that intro page, so this first question is asking you to rank and your understanding of the regional integration agenda. And here you're ranking, for example, the first question there, how much of the regional integration agenda are you familiar with? So the scale is of 0 to 10. So how much do you know of the SADC regional integration agenda in general? It shouldn't write strongly agree or disagree, but it should be a ranking question of from a scale of 1 to 10. This is how much I know of the regional SADC regional integration agenda. So you can rank anything between 0 to 10 and you submit. If you've answered that question, the next section is asking you to share your familiarity with the SADC protocols and strategies, for example, the RSDP. You will recall, honorable members, these were the issues being discussed throughout the week. The presentations made by the SADC colleagues, they have made references to a number of SADC protocols and strategies. So here we're trying to check, post the sessions, whether your knowledge levels on the different protocols has improved or not. And now the question is, are you familiar with any SADC protocols or strategies post the session? The answer is yes or no. So you have to select one option there. And if you have, the next section should be looking at what of these SADC protocols or strategies are you familiar with? So here you have an option of providing multiple answers. You can select 3, 4, or whatever number. If you know all of them, kindly do so. Take all of them and press submit. If you know one of those that listed, you may also do the same and submit. If you have, then the next section is asking you, with the options provided, what are some of the notable successes of the SADC regional integration agenda? Again, some of these have been made mention of in the sessions that have preceded us up until today. So we've provided a number of options there. If you know on multiple of them as successes, kindly tick accordingly and submit. If you know one or two, you may also do the same. For example, there is the visa-free entry across the member states. There is the power pool issue that has been a subject of great discussion. We have the model law guidelines on elections as some of the notable successes. You have the transport corridors and so on and so forth. So you have the option of providing multiple selections if you're familiar with them as successes. If we are happy, I would like us to move to the next section. Here, we're looking at the challenges. And again, appreciating that we're not at the promised land yet, there's still work to be done. What are some of the impediments that we think are slowing the pace of regional integration in SADC? Some of the options, and according to your assessment, you may choose one or two or many. So this is a multiple choice selection. There's the option of a lack of political will as an option, limited resources, financial as well as human in some cases. There's a question about variable geometry, that our member states are at different levels of development. Is that an issue for you? There's the issue of political instability, which seems to be an important pillar as the RSDP is concerned. Peace and security is the foundational pillar, as we've learned throughout the session. So you have here options that you can provide and submit. If you are happy, then we move on to the next section. We would like to appreciate from your responses, what role do you think parliaments play in the regional integration discourse? And if you press next, this is the question around the different stages of how strategies and protocols are implemented by parliaments or by member states. But here we are assessing the role that parliament plays in the different stages. So there is the first issue around ratification. Given the information and the interaction you've had throughout the course of the week, where do you think parliaments what is the role of parliament in the ratification process of the different strategies? Now, again, it's a scale. So if you think that ratification or parliaments play a very important role under ratification, you can choose whether it's very significant, whether you think they play a moderate role or a less significant role. So you rank your response. You only select one response for that. If you think they play a significant role, less significant role, or high significant role under ratification. If you have answered that one, then we move on to the next segment, which is now seeking your responses under domestication. So where do you place the role of parliament in the domestication processes of regional integration or regional integration strategies and instruments? Do they play a significant role, less significant role, or moderate significant role? You simply have to select one option, rank one option of those provided. If you're happy with that, the following section is asking you to rank the role of Parliament in the implementation of the SADC protocols. So again, do you think they play a significant role in the implementation of these strategies, moderate or less significant? You select one and submit. If we're done with that, the next section is now for you to appreciate the level of SADC Parliamentary Forum in terms of its mandate towards regional integration. So here, we're just trying to check whether you think SADC Parliamentary Forum's mandate has a significant role to play in the attainment of regional integration aspirations. So there's a scale of 0 to 10, and you will have to rank it accordingly and submit. If you are happy with that, the next section is looking at familiarity with the SADC PF's model law processes. So how much of the model law making processes are you familiar with, having been through the different sessions this week? So they are supposed to provide a rank of 0 to 10 once more. How familiar are you now with the model law making processes of the SADC Parliamentary Forum? If you're happy with that, the next question is asking you, what value have you derived from the SADC PF for your national work? Or what value do you continue to derive from the SADC PF in your work as a member of parliament? So you will rank accordingly and submit. The next, we're almost drawing to a close now. This section is looking at the relevance, the quality of the engagement or the materials provided throughout the week. So if you press next, the first question there will be, what is the use of this information you've gathered to your work as a member of parliament? Now, this is information throughout the week. How is it useful in your work as a member of parliament, representing the interest of your constituents? So you will have to rank accordingly and submit. Then we now look into the almost finish line section, where we're looking at assessing the quality of the training and its content. So here, we would like you to rank where does the quality lie in terms of the different presentations provided between 0 to 10. So you may rank it accordingly. If you're happy with that, the second question is looking at the effectiveness of the mode of delivery. Have the presentations been good? Are they a good way of delivering this training? Would you prefer, say, group discussions more than plenary sessions? Where do you think how do you rate the mode of delivery of the trainings and the input? Okay. If you rank that one, then how useful have the case studies or examples used been in the delivery of the different sessions? I'm sure you've received a number of examples of where SADC is making meaningful progress, as well as areas of importance to improve. So how have those examples strengthened your understanding of the material? If you're happy with that, the next section or question is looking at your overall satisfaction with the opportunities for discussions. So do you think there was enough time for you to input into the content, or you would prefer that they be more given your rank or score that you provide? Then the follow question is to ask you your overall satisfaction with the training. So in the organization, in the flow of the content, in the delivery of the training, and in the information you have benefited from, where do you place its significance? How important has it been for you as a member of parliament? So you rank and score and submit accordingly. And then in this section, we're asking you to suggest to us where we need to improve, where can we do better in the next sessions. So there are a number of options there. Maybe you would prefer that there be more topics on regional integration. Perhaps there is need for more time for discussions, or you would require more resource persons. For example, you'd like several other SADC units to be present here to make presentations for your input and appreciation as well. Or you require more case studies to appreciate what are the successes or where the challenges are. And maybe this would enhance your understanding of the regional agenda furthermore. So you have options here to choose multiple options and submit. That will mark the end of the survey if you have provided your responses. Thank you very much for your participation. You may press the finish button to really symbolize that you've concluded your work. Thank you very much, honorable members. I hand you back to the honorable chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald, for that exercise. It looks academic, yet in fact, it's helpful for the SADC Parliament to improve and helpful to us to gauge ourselves where we are and what we can do more to better our roles as parliamentarians. So thank you very much. And that completes it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Well done, Humphrey. Yeah. Honorable members, thank you very much. For the two-day session, yesterday and today, which was focused mainly on one of the forum's flagship initiatives, namely the project on enhancing accountability and citizens' participation in the regional integration 2025 to 2027, funded 90% by the the Austrian Development Agency and 10% by the European Union and implemented by GIZ. Amongst the projects, transformative outputs is the model law on constitutionalism and the rule of law, an instrument designed to strengthen democratic institutions, entrench constitutional values, and promote transparency across our member states. As the DGHR committee, working with our counterparts, the JWAT committee, we bear a central role in ensuring that this initiative achieves its intended impact. Our engagement, guidance, and oversight will determine or has determined how effective this project strengthens government in our region. Our task in this statutory meeting is clear. Oh, yeah. Like I said, gentlemen and ladies, it's been a pleasure presiding over this meeting. And I was here by your popular choice and voice. And I have it as my singular honor now, first to convey my appreciation, the appreciation of the committee for meeting and participating fully. And we hope we will take home something from the discourse from this committee. What will happen next? The Secretariat will provide the necessary technical support in terms of translating our discussions, our resolutions, our views into recommendations or resolutions to be put before plenary, which is just at the corner, to be held in this country, I believe in Durban, in November. I think it's towards the end of November, towards the early date in December. We would want to thank our Secretariat, thank our Secretary for the support, and thank the SG also for ably leading the joint committees. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I unfortunately have to expire. As it is always my motto, to aspire to inspire before I expire, and now I have expired. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And we have circulated the meal tickets. We can go for lunch and enjoy the afternoon. Those who are traveling, travel safe, including the chair.
I have all the confidence and trust in you.
Thank you, Chair.
Because you have done these things before,
Yes,
so,
Chair, we will not fail you.
yes.
ICT, we can end the meeting online.